Welcome to VSF Live. And today we're going to blast off Rocket Summer 2025. And I have with me four other co hosts of Rocket Summer 2025. In case you don't know, Michael K. Vaughn started this last year, and a couple of these hosts were with him, perhaps even all of them, besides myself. I'm a rookie here. And so it's great to welcome Pat from Book Chat with Pat. We have Gavin from Genre Books, Gareth from Books, Songs, and Other Magic. Did I say that right? Yeah. And we've got Greg
Beautiful.
from Another Bibliophile Reads, if I've got that one right. Welcome
Yep.
all.
Hi.
Maybe we should start a little bit with, and I didn't prep them for this, but just give us a little introduction to your channel, perhaps, and maybe even where you are here in our world. On my screen, I have Pat next. So, Pat, you want to give us a start?
Sure. So my channel is Book Chat with Pat. I've been on BookTube for about, I don't know, Gavin, how long has it been? A little over
Nearly 18 months now.
18,
surely.
okay, a year and a half, just about. I'm a retired high school English teacher. I watched BookTube for about a year and a half or so before I decided to jump in myself. And I discovered very late in my reading life that I was interested in science fiction, which was something that had not been a part of my early reading life. Perhaps I'm not exactly sure why that is, but I think that, young girls were not encouraged to read science fiction when I was growing up. But I discovered science fiction very late, and I was really, really interested in it and started reading Michael K. Vaughn's science fiction starter kit before I even started my channel, and just kind of read widely in a hurry a lot of stuff that you all read when you were probably very young and probably have read many times over. So I really am the novice in this whole area. But I guess just because I was so interested, Michael asked me to be a co-host last year, and I was kind of floored by that and very, very honored, but felt like I was definitely the new kid on the block. But science fiction is something, both classic science fiction and contemporary science fiction is something that I've been, that I've added to my repertoire. As an English teacher, I guess I've always, I was always reading the classics and contemporary fiction, but science fiction was the new find for me, and it's just been delightful. And in the world, I'm in New Jersey. I'm in the mid-Atlantic. So that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Pat.
Sure.
Gavin, you want to go next?
Well, I'm on the other side of the Atlantic. So I'm in southeast England, so about 50, 60 miles away from London. My channel is Genre Books. I started BookTube, I think, the same week as Pat did. The first Rocket Summer last year was the first thing I was asked to co-host. And I used to read a lot of science fiction. And then probably about 5 years ago, started to get back into it, but getting to know the older stuff, a lot of the pulp writers, that really took my interest. And it's just gone on from there.
Awesome. I think I share a little bit of both of your stories. We'll get to that. Gareth.
My channel is called Books, Songs, and Other Magic. I'm a music teacher by profession and a musician, and I've always read science fiction. So my first books were science fiction, and it's the thing I've read the most. Is what most of my collection is science fiction, and I've kind of had the opposite journey to Pat, because since doing BookTube especially, but just now and again in the decades that went before it, I've kind of dabbled with classics and serious literature, but science fiction's my love, and I absolutely love it. It's just out of this world.
And what part of UK are you from?
I live in Portsmouth, which is right at the bottom, right in the middle, in the middle of the coast of the bottom, so right next to the Isle of Wight, and near 2 hours from London.
Okay.
Not that far away from Gavin, really. Don't think. Yeah, Kent, isn't it? Yeah, so not that far.
Yeah, a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Greg.
Okay, my name is Greg. My channel is Another Bibliophile Reads. I had my 4th anniversary at the end of April, something like that. I'm an eclectic reader. I read a lot of different genres. I started off like in 6th grade, reading a lot of science fiction, and that continued through high school. And then I hit university, and I sort of had that science fiction thing thumped out of me. You know, I was like, no, you're not supposed to read science fiction. And I always did on the side, but it took a number of years, you know, to get that I still like science fiction, you know, even though I was taught that it wasn't your thing or it shouldn't be your thing, but it is. And I am a retired computer programmer. I live about 60 miles south of Washington, D.C., so I get to get close to all these scummy people around here, you know. So. One of the joys.
And I'm Richard Rempel, and I'm a retired teacher. This is one of my retirement projects. Instead of rebuilding a car in the garage or going golfing, this is what I like to do. Came back to reading science fiction. I read a lot when I was young and into my 20s. But you know what? Once I started my family and life happened, reading kind of went to the side a little bit. Read a lot of bestseller type novels, including some science fiction. But then I decided I could get back into this and enjoy it and share it with people. And so that's when I started my channel, Vintage SF. That was about just over 2 years ago now, and been having a great time doing it. And this project here, this Rocket Summer 2025, is right up my alley. I mean, I've been reading all these decades on my channel anyway, so it's just a lot of fun getting into this. So I was really appreciative that Michael invited me to co-host. I'm thinking maybe we should just run through a few comments here and say hello to some people.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Heidi. Hello, Heidi.
Hi, Heidi.
And we've got Jack,
Jack
from Science Fiction Finds. Dagon Studios. I had a test live feed, and he was in there. I believe it's a he from our conversation. Hello, Dagon. I'd learned that Dagon is from
that's Lovecraft.
Lovecraft.
That's right. At first I was thinking it was dragon misspelled or something like that. Constance.
Hi,
Hello.
Hey, Constance.
There's a number of people that I see in a couple of different live feeds. So that's where you start. You know, for me, those reruns were really important. I was actually old enough that the last little while of Star Trek being on TV, my dad would let me watch it sometimes. And so, yeah, that was a part of my origin story too.
Might be interesting to see what people's origin stories are, if that makes sense.
And they're talking across here to each other. That's great. Oh, I would just mention Mockingbird by Walter Tevis. I'm really impressed with that one. Walter Tevis, you guys are familiar with Walter Tevis, I'm sure.
Man Who Fell to Earth and
The Hustler as well.
Hustler.
Yeah.
And the one
Queen's
about chess.
Gambit.
Queen's Gambit.
Yeah.
Criminali keeps praising how good of an author he is, and I've only read The Hustler. And The Hustler is a great crime novel.
And Mockingbird is a science fiction novel that I don't think a lot of people have heard of, but it's in the SF Masterworks series.
It's a dystopian, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Rocket Crew. There we go. I guess I get to be a captain here.
I shouldn't be a pilot. I can't even drive a car.
Dr. Blood Money, I believe, is Philip K. Dick. So they're just talking about what's on there. And Joe is here. I like how he calls himself Chewbacca.
Chewbacca. That is awesome.
Welcome, Joe. And there we go. All right. I think we're caught up. So I think what I want to do is perhaps get this out of the way where I'll just announce what the poll winners were and what I'll be reading based on what the viewers voted for on my channel. So I had videos for each week coming up because they represent different decades, and my my viewers were able to go to a poll and vote on them. So let me add the first one here. This is week 1. It's pre-1940, and the winner is We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. And that was 34%. It was very close with The Last Man. It's 30% if you can't see that there. They were going back and forth for a little while. And I've actually read that one already and made the video because I want it to be ready for next week. So let me just remove that. So you will see a video on Monday, I believe, for this one. Have any of you read it?
What translation did you pick?
I have the one by Bella Shevich.
We did a live stream about We, didn't we?
We did.
Greg?
We did. We did
Ah.
that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I can't remember the translation, but I think not everyone read the same translation.
I could see how that could affect
Spice
it.
it up.
Yeah. I've actually read a second one from that list because I had enough time for the first week. And I, weirdly enough, picked the lowest voted one, When the Worlds Collide. And so I'll talk a little bit about the movie as well.
That's cool. So you can do a video about that one as well?
I have it made already. So I have next week's videos made.
Awesome.
I moved on to week 2.
Wow.
And here's week 2.
Have you
on
read
this
these as well?
Yeah. The Dying Earth by Jack Vance won by quite a bit over Sirius and other novels here.
Hmm.
So I have an omnibus that has 4 of the stories here, and it has a cover which really doesn't reflect the stories at all.
I have the exact same copy on my shelf behind me.
Yeah, it's a John Berkey cover, and he does, awesome science fiction images and, spaceships and things like that. But this is far more to the fantasy realm than even science fiction. We'll get into that when I talk about it in the second week. The
Kind of hard to
second book,
classify that book.
pardon me?
I say it's kind of hard to classify what it is.
Yeah. Some people, what do they call it? Science fantasy?
Yeah, that's quite a common. I'm a little bit cynical about science fantasy because I feel like science fiction, by definition, is science fantasy, and it's just like relax a little bit about whether or not it's really scientific. I think, and just if it's not scientific, still just call it science fiction.
Well, as I was doing this work here on this channel, and I talked to different people, different YouTube providers as well, there really wasn't much of a difference between science fiction and fantasy until the publishers in around the 70s kind of created the fantasy bookshelf area in stores. And otherwise, it was kind of considered together a lot. And so I've tried to kind of go back to that attitude because I didn't read a lot of fantasy before I started this channel.
It's in UK shops; they're always together.
Mhm.
Well, that's the way it was when I was working in the late 80s, in the 90s. Science fiction and fantasy were always together.
Mhm.
And
But a
I
lot
don't
of authors write the same. A lot of authors write
but
both, don't they?
the genres have divorced. Now they are divorced. Some people are still friendly, but there are fantasy readers, science fiction readers. Some people stick to their their genre, and I don't know what caused that. Something happened.
I think that's a theme for another video.
Yeah.
There's some people who talk about the Del Reys in the 70s kind of promoting fantasy as a separate genre. Judy Lynn and Lester. But I don't think I want to get too far into that one here. Let's go to my third week. Once again, a pretty clear winner. We've got somebody here from the UK, Brian W. Aldis, 42%, with Simac in the second place there. So I have not read any of these yet, and so that's coming up in my future reads. And the last one is for the fourth week, Lord of Light by Roger Zelazny, 1967,
Oh,
34% over Drowned World by Ballard. This one was kind of fun because we had 3 different countries represented here in this one. So those are the ones I'm going to read. There's a couple extra I'm going to place into there as I go through the month. But I look forward to seeing all of your videos as well as we go through the month.
Mm.
Yeah,
I'm going to take
I'm also reading Lord of Light this month.
Excellent. Anyone else repeating something that I'm reading?
Well, not. I don't know if you're going to get to it, but I am going to read Drowned World.
Yeah.
I might also.
Okay.
I have After Worlds Collide, which is on my maybe list.
Okay. That would be very interesting. I don't have that book.
That's
Just
as
like
rare
when Worlds,
as teeth.
just like when Worlds Collide is kind of a spoiler to itself. After Worlds Collide is a bit as well, just by the title.
Yeah.
I'm glad you've already read it. You know.
All right. Here we go. We're going to just go into comments and then we'll come back. Looks like I've been voted out. Pat.
No. I'm not going to be the captain. If anybody's a fraud here, it's me.
I don't know, you've got the central position there in the screen.
That's true.
That's right. She's in the captain's chair.
No. You don't want me to be your captain. We'll crash.
Oh, okay. Somebody might finish that with
I really
me.
like We. I think We was really good. I liked it.
I think it's an important book. I really got into the background of the author and the time in history that he wrote it. It's very, very interesting. And his publication story.
Yeah. And his influence.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
For a second, I wasn't understanding uni, but that's university, I'm sure.
Yeah.
In the original, of course.
Ooh.
Wow.
Wow.
You'll have to chime in on my video and let me know about the mistakes I make in terms of what I do. I didn't find it hard to get into because it's basically short stories strung together in the dying Earth realm that he's created. Once again, that one I haven't completed, but I know that there's a really interesting backstory of Jack Vance writing them while he was in the Merchant Marines during World War II. So I find that interesting.
yeah.
Probably
especially
overall.
The science fiction was
Now,
short stories, wasn't it?
I'll complain because my favorite fantasies are from an earlier era where they're really thin. If you remember Michael Moorcock, it's like they're novellas they were writing.
Yeah, the Eric books are short.
Yeah. Then you've got Sanderson and all, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got some recommendations here from Heidi.
I was going to say Heidi reads a lot of fantasy, so it's interesting she doesn't like the dying.
There she goes. Good.
Yeah, Non-Stop's really good.
Yeah. Someone told me that the American title is different, something like The Starship, and that's a bit of a spoiler, but every kind of little blurb you read about it, you kind of figure that out from what they say about it. Drowned World is great.
It is.
Are you at an airport?
It's a great book. I really like. I read that last year or the year before. That really took me.
Bart's channel's really good, isn't it?
It is, and Bart helps me out with Lem a couple times already. And,
that's right.
Buddy reads. I love Lem.
Good author.
Yeah.
Third person doing Lord of Light.
Good. By the way, I do definitely have some friends who are not co-hosts here, but are taking part in Rocket Summer. So there's a lot of people joining us. Chris of Liminal Spaces was just talking to me about it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's good. He's got a great channel.
Yeah, he does.
Can I ask you, Richard, what you taught before you retired?
Sure. There was a variety, but I taught one of the things is I was in a private school, so I taught some biblical studies in the life of Christ. And that's been really helpful in just understanding some of the background imagery that some of these stories have, actually. I taught computers as in, it was called ICT, Information and Computer Technology. So that was just helping kids get a beginning level knowledge of spreadsheets and different programs for creating things like videos and photography. And I did teach a little bit of photography. I taught our yearbook class in the school, a couple other different things, a little bit of one art class, which I did for 1 year, which was a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, the answer is no.
Although I know about the new economic policy, I studied history, so that's fascinating in itself, I think.
Yeah. Well, I did a little bit of reading about Stalin and Lenin to just try to understand that period a little bit that he was writing it in, and the Bolshevik revolution. That all kinds of comes into play in terms of background knowledge.
I find that stuff really fascinating.
Yeah. Captain Finity is in the house.
Time Travel, please. That's a fantastic name.
Mm-hmm.
He's our captain.
Yeah.
I think he's going to help me out here with when I get to we. That's what that's referring to. Another lover of nonstop. Orphans in the Sky. I haven't read that one, but I've heard a little bit about that plot. I don't think.
Well, talk about wackadoodle space fantasy. My entry into science fiction was Star Wars, which is a lot less scientific than Star Trek. But
a lot of science fiction could actually just be retitled Wackadoodle Space Fantasy.
Yeah.
We need a channel that's called Wackadoodle Space Fiction or something.
Yeah, that'd be good. I was 6 when Star Wars came out, so I was the perfect age. Not me for 6. Not me for 6 at 6.
Oh, and here's a great paperback collector from the SF Book Cave.
Yeah.
All right. He also agrees with the Feist and Wirtz book recommendation. And 1920s. Okay. I don't know other futuristic ones from the 1920s from Soviet Union. I'm not sure. Are any of you familiar with something?
No.
When did the Strugatsky brothers write? Was that later, wasn't it?
That's
later.
70s or 60s, I think, was their big.
60s, yeah. I thought it was later, yeah. They're really good.
More on the art than the literature.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they definitely wanted to look into the future because their present was so cramped.
And wasn't the future going to be great?
Now, I was thinking at the beginning here that one of the things I'd like to ask our guests was a question, since we're looking back at different authors through the history of science fiction before 1970, is there somebody, and it could be after 1972, but is there somebody who you think is so good that people even who don't like science fiction or outside the genre should read this person, that they should have a wider audience than perhaps they do right now? And I gave examples. Ray Bradbury would be an example because he's been taught in schools, his short stories and things like that. And Le Guin similarly has been. So those are two examples I gave when I just brought out this question. And how about we'll do a free for all? Who would like to go first?
Well, I'll tell you a little story.
Okay.
When I had a book club in Washington State, the moderator of the book club usually just picked the books herself, and she was talking to me because she likes science fiction. And she said, why don't we try a science fiction book in our book club with people who generally did not read it? And we went back and forth saying, what book? We eventually settled on a book that I'm not positive was the best choice. We picked Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood.
Oh my goodness.
But I wanted to introduce people to science fiction. And why, yes, it's science fiction. It's also not science fiction. And there's a really funny story about that time. There was a podcast of science fiction readers, and they did a book, and they picked Orkins and Craig. And one of the moderators refused to join that month. He says, Orkins and Craig is not science fiction. It's a science fiction book club. And then I heard of another book club. There was a literary book club. And they said, we're not reading that book. It's science fiction.
So interesting.
And what's important is that you fail to understand that a book can be science fiction and not science fiction at the same. You're not limited to one genre.
Right.
Are you also saying that people will argue about anything if they get a chance?
Yes, they will. And they'll fail to see what it is instead of what it's perceived to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Or basing that on the author.
Yes.
A bunch of people were upset when Kazuo Ishiguro decided to write science fiction.
Yeah.
Or put their fingers in their ears so they don't know that Robert Graves wrote science fiction or that L.P. Hartley wrote science fiction. It's just something people experimented with. Is E.M. Forster wrote science fiction.
Oh, well,
just the one.
Machine Stops. Yeah.
P.D. James as well with Children of Men.
Yeah.
Children of Men.
Which was actually really disappointing for me. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I love the film. Thought I'll read the book. And I was like, oh, never mind.
I was living where the post-apocalyptic London was being filmed.
Oh, really?
They only had to touch it up a little bit.
That's great.
So, Greg, why don't you start us off with the book that you... Well, actually, I know that you have a number of them, but why don't you pick one?
Okay. I'll start off with... I'm going to show I only have this in Kindle. But
Yeah.
Abides by George R. Stewart.
Yeah.
That was mine too.
And this is another one that you could possibly say is literature or science fiction.
Right.
And I remember reading this post-apocalyptic novel when I was in my 20s, and it just defied what post-apocalypse was about.
Right.
I was thinking Stephen King, George R. McCammon, all these survivors battling your dark evil lord, and he presented the apocalypse the way it really would be in real life if people survived. And the enemy was sort of time, the slow disintegration of civilization, how for many years you had running water that would just survive, and then it ran out. And what's one of the big things that they had problem with? Ants, as I remember. Right? They didn't know how to deal with ants. And then what do you do with the children who are raised in this civilization, who don't understand what the old world was and how they mistrust technology? And it's such a great story. And I've read this twice now. I read it when I was really young, and I listened to an audiobook a number of years ago. And I hope this is not a huge spoiler, but I did not realize the first time I read it that the love of the main character was black.
Right.
And it just sort of, because he described it just so casually when he says, oh, we're not right for each other, or something like that. I said, oh, we're fine. And I kept thinking, it was remarkable for the day and age it was written.
Correct.
1949.
Right.
1949. And part of the reason I think he did it so subtly is that he wanted some readers to skip over it. That it would, he made it a non-issue.
Right.
What was really at the time an important issue.
Right.
And that's one of the great things about this book, from a more enlightened age that I can see it now. So I thought that was just great.
Right. I mean, to me, that said that in the future, this isn't going to be an issue. You know, that racism isn't going to matter anymore.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Pat, do you want to say some more about it since that was?
Sure. I mean, that was my book too. That was the one that I
knew one of us would pick it.
Well, we knew, and I had never read this book until last summer. I read it for Rocket Summer, and that was my introduction to it, and I loved it. I was blown away by it, and I was actually wishing that I had known about this book when I was teaching, because I had great liberty to introduce. We revised our curriculum all the time and kept it new and fresh. And I definitely would have proposed teaching this. This would have been, and the kids would have absolutely taken to it. So I was, a little bit sad that I was really late to the party on this one, because I would have liked to have introduced it to my to the English curriculum. And I think, and I didn't know anything about George R. Stewart, but he really is an interesting, or was an interesting character and an interesting writer, because he was an English professor. He was a college English professor, but he wrote history books. He wrote other novels. Right now, this is probably his most famous book. But I think outside of science fiction, people don't know about this. This certainly never came across, my desk in my 40 years of teaching English, and that's unfortunate, because I think this would have been just a great addition, and especially in the modern world now, because the whole world is wiped out by or most of the world is wiped out by a virus. I mean, it would have also been incredibly timely as well. But I was just, of all the things I read last summer for Rocket Summer, this was the one that made the most powerful impression on me. And I've heard many other people talk about it on the science fiction channels that I watch since that time, but I didn't know anything about it before. And I thought that, this is a book that deserves a wider audience. And it is, while it is science fiction, it is also, I think, it has incredible literary tropes that are moving through it as well. The main character, Isherwood, he's based on other, literary characters. He has something in common with Melville's, Ishmael, but also the biblical Ishmael. There's so much that you could do with this as a work of literature, as well as, and I don't mean to say science fiction isn't literature, because of course it is, but it has very serious literary tropes in it as well, that would have just, I'm thinking again about teaching this perhaps in like my senior English class. It would have had so much that we could have, talked about as a work of literature, as well as a social statement. And this is a post-World War II novel. So clearly there was a fear of nuclear holocaust and, a potential apocalypse. So, so it made a powerful impression on me, and I wished I could go back and introduce it to more people.
We can be a bit careful with that, because
what?
I was going to show that this is another book I have. This is a work of nonfiction by George R. Stewart.
What is? I can't see the
names on the land. It's how do places get named?
Oh, cool.
And now it makes a lot more sense because I never looked up the author that much. But he was a college professor, so obviously he could write fiction and nonfiction. And
yes,
the idea, you think about it, places get named, and we don't know how.
Right.
It's a huge, pretty huge book on that subject, 500 pages. But
yeah. And he wrote a lot of historical texts too. He was really a Renaissance man. He was quite diverse, and people do not talk about him in in curriculum. And I don't know about in the rest of the world, but. So that was mine.
One of the courses I did teach at one point was grade 8 English, and I had never heard of this person until I came onto BookTube, and I was just surprised because it would fit so well within the English program, I think. One of the themes that I love in there is the difference between the generations. As a generation grows up that has not been in the world that we are in, that they're in a world that's depopulated, and they don't get why preserving books might be something really important to your society. And it's a fascinating discussion, and the main character has to come to kind of an understanding of what this next generation, what's important to them.
It's about a failure of teaching, which is would make it difficult for one to teach.
I remember that. In the book, Isherwood is trying to teach the children, and he's very. I mean, it's been a number of years. I don't remember the details, but eventually, there's something that he just throws in the towel and doesn't do it anymore. And it was like, no, you got to teach. But like we're saying, like, it's a new world. Hey,
Welcome, Randy, by the way.
Randy.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Randy.
Randy.
Y'all thought I wasn't coming, didn't you?
I just all of a sudden saw you lurking there at the bottom of my screen. Go, hey, there we go.
Hey, there's Randy Ray, ready for that 6th seat.
We were just, you were hearing us, I'm sure. We were just discussing Earth Abides by George R. Stewart. We had 2 people pick that as a book that they think should have a wider acclaim than just science fiction.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I used to carry that book in my bookstore, but I've never read it.
Oh. You're in for a treat if you get to it.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Gavin, if you go next, I'll go after you because my choice is ridiculous.
I'm going to bring the tone a bit down as well, I think. Not that, well, I don't know about beyond science fiction, but he needs to be read more within science fiction because of the historical importance. So I've gone for E. Doc Smith, and this is the one I've read this week. So I read the first Skylark book, Skylark of Space, last Rocket Summer. So I read the sequel this year, and I've read a number of his Lensman series, and I've read another one which wasn't attached to any series and was an absolute disappointment. But I'll talk about the Skylark. It's the beginning of space opera. It's
a huge canvas, isn't it?
And an increasing one. The more the books go on, both in Skylark and in Lensman, the stakes get bigger, the weapons get bigger. And it is just a very, very influential book or a couple of series. And he's influential on some people who just go on to do some huge stuff. Gene Roddenberry was a big fan of Skylark and Lensman as well. And the Lensmen are this intergalactic group of people who are basically, keeping the peace or keeping the law. Lensman is also the beginning of, there would be no Green Lantern without the Lensman. So there's a lot of sort of superhero stuff in there as well. But with Skylark and a bit with Lensman as well, George Lucas is very much influenced by it. There is a word that Smith loves to use when describing space battles, and that is Coruscant. And he uses it in almost every single space battle.
Wow. And
it has to be where the idea comes from. And I was reading this recently, this week, and there was just a quote in it. I'm sure that he may have been thinking about it a bit more biblically, but the quote was, "Infinity is comprehensible only to the infinite one, to the all-shaping force directing and controlling the universe." And force is with a capital F. Yeah. You can see that it happened. And later on in the series, planets are exploding. People are throwing moons at each other. It goes absolutely wild. I can absolutely see why he is not read these days. The style is so dated. It's untrue. It is just absolutely full of 1920s, 1930s slang. Whenever I read it, I feel like I'm listening to sort of Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn just shouting at each other really quickly in black and white. It's absolutely over the top in every single respect. But everything that comes later with space opera is there. The dastardly villains, the pseudoscience, the made-up reasons for things happening. He's an influence on John Campbell, his style of writing, that whole sort of super science way of thinking about things. And I think he is a bit neglected.
Gareth?
Just in case some of our viewers aren't picking it up, you were talking about Star Wars with Coruscant and
Yes.
And all those items that you were talking about.
Can I just add to what you said about E. Doc Smith? So he was it was the main thing I think that J.M. Straczynski cited as an influence for Babylon 5. And I read Triplanetary by E. Doc Smith because of being a big Babylon 5 fan, and I thought it was really boring.
That's got a very weird start, Triplanetary. But then, there's taken the idea that there are these two ancient opposing races across the universe, and basically humans are their playthings.
And that's exactly what Babylon 5 is about.
He does go on a little bit at the beginning of that, because here's an example from history, and here's another example from history. It's just like, oh my god, how much history is there?
I think sometimes, I don't know if you guys would all agree, but I think it's really important to read and know about the people that influence people, but they're not always the best ones at it. Do you know what I mean? So other people can do it better later on. If you agree.
He wrote Triplanetary to link a book he'd written previously with this new Lensman idea. Okay. He decided to roll it all into the same thing. So it's a bit of a utility piece, that book.
It reads like a utility piece.
So Gareth, this is my ebook that I'm bringing my weekend.
Oh, okay. Be interested to know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I've never read E. Doc Smith before. I don't know if it's the same series that you read. I think this is his Lensman series.
Yeah. I'd start with Galactic Patrol. Galactic, that's got to be in there. Galactic Patrol.
Is that the first one he published, or is that?
That's the first. I think that's the first published. Yeah.
I can tell you what the first story is in here in just a second. This is like 11 books in this omnibus. Triplanetary is the one that's first.
Oh, okay.
And then,
it's a very cool name, isn't it?
Patrol that was
E. Doc Smith.
Say again.
It's a very cool name, E. Doc Smith.
He was a PhD.
But it's
Edward Elmer Smith wouldn't have had the same ring, I don't think.
Not as sexy, is it? No. Edward Elmer. I love that.
So, I mean, Skylark he wrote when he was in his 20s. The book of his that he wrote that I didn't like was The Galaxy Primes, and he was approaching 70 by that point. Someone had told him he was passé, and he was trying to be with it, and it really didn't work.
Love it.
That reminds me of people trying to be new wave who really weren't.
Yeah. He'd waffle on about urbanity a lot. And that was it. That was the nearest concession he was making to the modern world. I mean, the guy's born in 1890.
So, Gareth, should we go to yours next?
Okay, so I'm going to do two actually, because I think one's not quite as ridiculous. So this one is not a massive surprise, but this is someone who is known in science fiction, isn't really known outside it, and weirdly is bizarrely always out of print. But he's won shitloads of awards, is very famous, and that's Harlan Ellison. So Harlan Ellison's, I think most people would agree he's a really important writer, but he's just constantly out of print. It's just really weird. You can't get his stuff. So this was recently released, and this was a really, really nice thing because it meant that these stories were available again in actual shops rather than just in secondhand shops if you were lucky. So that was really cool, and I think he's an incredible writer, fascinating man, but he never liked being called a science fiction writer. He always said he wasn't a science fiction writer, but so much of what he writes is science fiction. But he wrote other stuff as well, and he wrote tons and tons of non-fiction, most of him just ranting about stuff. He was a very angry man. But you can read the anger and the bitterness and kind of cynicism and caustic kind of sting in the way he writes. What I love about him the most, I think, is tone of his writing. You can hear the energy and the kind of almost his actual voice in the voice of the writing, if you like. And I think that's really interesting. I don't think there's any other writer where you can really hear his actual voice when you're reading it. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think he's definitely one that I think should be more known and should be more in print and more kind of like out there, and like just someone who gets talked about, like Bradbury and all the other big names. I think he should be one of them. And he is in science fiction circles, but not outside that really, you know. And the fact that he's so unavailable is just crazy. And then my when I said I was going to do something ridiculous, it's because clearly this is not serious fiction, but I'm always championing Robert Sheckley, and I think he's really underrated. And I'm mentioning Dimension of Miracles in particular because I would love to know the truth. Make Douglas Adams do a lie detector test to see if he really didn't read this, because he said in an interview he didn't read this, but it's like Hitchhikers Before Hitchhikers. So and Hitchhiker's Guide, I think most people agree that Hitchhiker's Guide is a masterpiece, and everyone loves it. Even the really serious science fiction readers say they love Douglas Adams' Hitchhikers. And it'd just be interesting if those people gave this a go, because it's completely mad, but it's amazing, and I love it. And I've read it many times, and I've read everything I've got by Sheckley, which is a lot. I think he's brilliant. But can I just read a little bit of the back so you can go, oh, sure. That sounds like Hitchhiker's Guide. I
just like to mention one thing. Randy, I just muted you because there was a little bit of a feedback coming there, but I'll unmute you, and I want to talk to you next.
Okay, so it says on the back, Intergalactic Sweepstake winner. When Thomas Carmody wins the jackpot in the Intergalactic Sweepstakes, he's whisked off to galactic headquarters to claim his prize in person. But when he arrives in outer space, the only problem is, how does he get back to Earth? The Odyssey home takes him through the most extraordinary experiences on extraordinary worlds, populated by extraordinary people. There's one point where he has an argument with a dinosaur. And overall looms the terror of his personal predator, a monster of many guises, designed and created specifically for devouring Carmodies. It's completely mad and brilliant. So, Dimension of Miracles. I like that kind of science fiction. Go on.
I've heard a few different people say that he is Douglas Adams before there was a Douglas Adams.
Yeah. And I love Douglas Adams, so I'd be very polite to him if I met him. Obviously, we can't anymore. But the man was great. But I feel like he's read it. I reckon he's read that. I don't know. He always denied it.
Really? Oh. So, Randy, let me just get you back on here. Hey there. We've been chatting at the beginning here, and I just want to catch your channel. You are the Literate Texan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about, well, just maybe even where in Texas you are, and tell us a little bit about your channels, just to get us an introduction to who you are.
Sure. I'm in Denton, Texas, which is at the top of the Golden Triangle. There's Dallas, there's Fort Worth, and there's Denton in between them and just to the north of them. I think we're the only ones who care about the Golden Triangle. I don't think Dallas and Fort Worth give Denton a second thought, though. But I went to college here and just loved the town and moved back here when my wife wanted to get her PhD. She got her PhD and then divorced me. But I get to live in Denton now, so it turned out okay.
That sounds like a title of a country song.
Well, that's no surprise. I was reminiscing with a buddy of mine here earlier. I grew up in the 1980s in Texas in a small town called Bonham, Texas, like John Bonham, the drummer. And the only radio station that we could get other than our local radio station was WBAP 820 on your AM dial, 50,000 watts. And so country music was all I could listen to on the radio because the local station played country and so did WBAP.
There you go.
I didn't learn anything about pop music until I was like 17 or 18. Did you want me to tell you about my channel too?
Yeah, tell us about your channel and maybe a little bit about how you came to science fiction or this crew of
Well, I'll
co-hosts.
tell you exactly how I came to science fiction. In fact, let's see, is it here? Y'all wouldn't know. There's a book. It's right here.
Oh,
This is the
Brilliant.
Science Fiction Hall of Fame.
Brilliant.
So when I was a teenager, my mother bought me a copy of that in an Avon edition. And at the time, I don't know, and I still don't know. She had an Avon lady. They sold cosmetics door to door in those days.
Yep.
But there was also a publisher called Avon Publishing. And my guess is they're unrelated, but wouldn't it be cool if the same people who made the cosmetic products for Avon were also responsible for me falling in love with science fiction? But yeah, that was the first science fiction book I ever read, and I was hooked. My mother noticed that I liked science fiction, and she subscribed to Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine and Alfred Hitchcock Magazine. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but she wanted to get me something similar, so she got me a subscription to the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, which is still being published and is wonderful. And she got me a subscription in 1982, and she paid for my subscription until 1988 when I turned 18. And at that point, she decided that I could buy my own damn magazines. And so for years, I didn't have a subscription to the Fantasy and Science Fiction magazine. But as soon as I could afford to, I bought a lifetime subscription. It was $1,000 when they were still offering a lifetime subscription. So I have a lifetime subscription to Fantasy and Science Fiction magazine, which is not the magazine that it was when I was a teenager. I guess issues have changed a lot since then.
it sounds like it might have been a deal at the now that you're thinking about it, though.
Yeah, well, 1,000. Yeah. I mean, they're all lined up on my bookshelf in there, and they look awfully pretty. I've got years worth of them, and they do look pretty on a shelf. And they always had such great cover art too. I remember when I was in 8th and 9th grade, I was taking art in high school, and we would do paintings. But a lot of times, I would take one of the paintings from the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction covers and do my own version of it in acrylics for class.
Nice.
So yeah, great magazine. Great way to get started growing up on science fiction and stuff. Fell in love with Isaac Asimov really quickly because he had a story in every issue of Fantasy and Science Fiction magazine, but it wasn't really a story. It was an essay. He wrote the science column there. And he did that forever, among the many other things that he did, but he was insanely productive. I think he was one of those people too, like, some people are claustrophobic and they really hate being inside cramped up spaces. There's an opposite to that. And he liked being in closed up spaces. So he had a closet converted into an office, and he did all of his writing in a closet because he liked being in enclosed spaces like that. Well, Isaac Asimov trivia for you.
Circuit too.
What's that, Gavin?
Well, so I also owned a bookstore that specialized in horror books. We billed ourselves as the only all horror bookstore in Texas. And anyway, y'all know how to end up with a small fortune after owning a bookstore? Step one, start with a large fortune. That's about how it works. Yeah. I had a friend who told me I should have named my bookstore Randy's Folly because I had lots of money before I owned a bookstore. But after I owned a bookstore, I no longer had lots of money. But it was fun. Can I talk about a neglected author too?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Harlan Ellison.
Oh.
Okay, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of him or not.
That's the one I just mentioned, Randy.
I'm just kidding. I heard you talking about Harlan Ellison. So I found out about Harlan Ellison when I was a teenager. He wrote a very lengthy feature article for Playboy magazine about 1988. And around here in 1988, if you're not living with your parents, one of the first things you do is you subscribe to Playboy magazine. It's impossible to do now because it's not really in print anymore. But one of the first things I did was subscribe to Playboy magazine, and Harlan Ellison had written this incredible, and it had to have been a good 10,000 words feature article about comic books. And I was also the vice president of the University of North Texas Comic Book Club. So I decided to write to Harlan Ellison and see if he would be kind enough to come speak to us at our college, at the comic book club. Now, you have to keep in mind, my comic book club had about a dozen guys in it, and we were just the nerdiest bunch of comic book geeks that you've ever seen in your life. Harlan Ellison wrote me back on his own letterhead, which was beautiful. He had beautiful stationery. And the letter was dated December 25th, 1988. Christmas Day is when he wrote me back.
Day.
Wow.
Yeah, and I can still remember that the first thing he mentioned in his letter was that he suspected that the University of North Texas Comic Book Club was not heavily funded by the university. But he was going to go ahead and include his pricing for having him come out and speak anyway, just in case. And I didn't know how anything worked in those days when it came to getting authors to come to your campus. We were not funded at all by the university. So, yeah, I never got him to come out. I do remember him saying something about Trekkies having the bat guano for brains. And I thought that was a nice little turn of phrase. And what else was it? And so eventually, by the time I was a senior in college, I had joined the student council for the whole college, student association. They had plenty of money to afford someone like Harlan Ellison to come speak. And he had his sales pitch down in that letter. And by then, I knew my way around well enough politically at the campus. I could have gotten Harlan Ellison to come speak, but I had also discovered alcohol by then and wasn't nearly as interested in science fiction at the time.
I think we're getting good flavor for your channel too.
Yeah, I've had people say in my comments that my videos always get a lot better once I start rambling about something that's not as related to the topic as you would think.
Can I just
response from Harlan Ellison, though? I mean, most people's response from Harlan Ellison was a lot briefer and of the 2-word variety.
Yeah,
that's true. He didn't flip me off or anything.
Can I just add something about Harlan Ellison? That you mentioned Christmas. He wrote a script for a Twilight Zone episode in the 80s, which was about an evil Santa Claus, and they wouldn't film it. They said, "We're not filming that."
Oh, that's great.
Interesting.
It was called Knuckles, yeah, and Knuckles was an evil Santa Claus.
That version of the Twilight Zone, by the way, the 1980s iteration, was terrific.
Yeah, it was really good. There's some good stuff in there.
Yeah, there was an episode called
Go on.
Paladin of the Lost Hour.
Yeah. Which is
it had Danny Kaye in it.
Is that Snazzy?
And it was based on one of Ellison's story, but he also wrote the teleplay.
Oh no, it was Ellison, yeah.
Yeah,
He also
um,
wrote a story called "Crazy as a Soup Sandwich," which is one of my favorite titles.
yeah,
Crazy
yeah,
as
it's a
a
great
Soup
one.
Sandwich.
And there was another one that he did. Saturday was filmed as an episode, and it starred Bruce Willis. It was before Bruce Willis was famous, before Moonlighting even.
Directed by Wes Craven as well.
Yeah, Wes Craven directed a lot of those episodes of Twilight Zone. But at one time you could get those on DVD, but they've been out of print for years and years, and they're not streaming anywhere.
You can get them over here, and they're on TV over here.
Yeah. Well, around here where I live, the only streaming, you can find them streaming on YouTube, but the quality is just awful.
Yeah.
But I remember it being just solid television programming, especially for someone of that age who loved science fiction. And at the time, Twilight Zone was still really popular. There was the magazine was going on at the time, and then they came out with a Twilight Zone comic book, which Ellison was involved in that. So was Neil Adams. It had a limited edition. I mean, it was ran for 4 issues or 6 issues. I don't remember which, but yeah, what I'd read was that, and this is funny too. I was thinking about this earlier this morning, believe it or not. Harlan Ellison didn't like being lumped in with the science fiction writers because he felt like people would look down on science fiction writers as genre writers. And he aspired to be more like a Jorge Luis Borges type, who transcended the genre. And I don't know whether he succeeded or not, but I'm also friends with a game designer named Sandy Peterson. Are you anybody here in the role playing game community, tabletop role
He
playing?
was part of the Chaosium back in the 80s.
That's exactly right. Yeah, Sandy created a game called Call of Cthulhu,
I
based
had
on
that.
H.P. Lovecraft. You have the game?
I
Yeah,
used
yeah,
I
it's
don't have it
huge.
anymore. I wish I did the original.
That game
Wonderful,
is massive
wonderful
over
game.
here.
Well,
It's huge over here.
Sandy used to live about 20 minutes away from me, and I used to play in his house game on Saturday nights. But Sandy told me a story about meeting Harlan Ellison at a science fiction convention one time. And you know how literary writers would look down their noses at science fiction writers? Apparently, when Harlan Ellison found out that my friend Sandy wrote for role playing games, he didn't want anything else to do with him. He's kind of rolled his eyes and looked down his nose at him the whole time. So, there's always somebody above you in the pecking order, and there's always somebody below you in the pecking order.
Yeah.
You know what? I think we're going to go to some comments now, and then because you know what, I'm going to have to probably skip over some of them here, but I'll throw some on the screen here, and if we need to say anything, we can. And then I'll get.
Do I need to mute myself again?
Pardon me?
Do I need to mute myself again? And you still getting feedback?
You know what? I'll mute you if I see there's feedback, and then you'll see
great.
that it's muted, right? But right now it seems to be fine.
Okay, cool.
Okay. All right. So, wow, we're going to have to go backwards a little bit. There is a question here. Are there any general fiction books of the last 40 years that you recommend to science fiction readers? I'll let you guys answer that while I look through some of the other questions here.
That's such a good question.
Well, I mean, Randy's already mentioned Borges. I suppose not the last 40 years. Okay, Paul Auster, New York Trilogy.
Oh, I was going to mention Paul Auster too, but 4321.
Actually,
No, I've got one
go
to
ahead.
recommend. Everything Matters by, golly, it's my favorite novel, and I can't remember the author of it right now. I'm on medication. I have to always keep that in mind with me. But yeah, the novel's called Everything Matters, and it's really good. It's about a guy who knows exactly the date the world's going to end because he's got voices in his head, and the voices are always right about everything. Ron Curry Jr. is the author's name.
I was just thinking Cosmos by Sagan, or any of the things that have been written in the science field that would apply to some of the science fiction we read.
Mind you, in the television series, he is on a spaceship, so...
Heidi says time travel books are good for the lit fic crowd. Okay. Time and Again and Outlander. Time and Again, is that the one that's by Finney?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's another novelist that potentially could be more widely known for he's Body Snatchers too, right?
Yeah.
Body Snatchers?
Yes.
Yeah. There we go. You got it.
That's what I'm holding
Really
up
good
right now.
Yeah.
Are you going to read that, Greg, this month?
I read it a few years ago.
I was thinking of reading it. I was going
It's
to
really
read it.
good.
It holds up very well, I
It
think.
does. No,
Yeah.
The one thing about the Body Snatchers is, if you buy it today, you will get the boulderized version.
Oh.
I got this paper. It's a really wonderful paperback, and I didn't want to spoil the paperback, so I said I'm just going to borrow it from the library. And from the library, it's called Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, right.
So when you start reading it, I noticed, like in the first paragraph, someone's driving a car, and I don't remember what it was. It was a 53 something, and I was reading it in the Invasion, and it was a 73 car or something like that. I go, what? And I don't know if it was the author or the editors, but they went through and changed all the dates in this book.
But I wonder if it's just that published, because you've mentioned that before on your channel.
It's more than that. In this book, there's some doctors and they're smoking. And I just looked it up in the 70s version, and they cut out the smoking.
Yeah. But we've got over here, the Galland's version is in the shops. I'm wondering
That's what I have.
I'm wondering if that's just the original version.
My guess is if it's called The Body Snatchers.
Yeah,
It's the original. If it's called Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it's the boulderized version.
I have the SF Masterwork version of it.
It's real easy. Go to page 1.
Is that because Sorry, Greg, I'm just thinking, is that because the Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a novelization of the film of the 70s?
No, they came out with a new version of the movie, and obviously they wanted a version of the book to go with the movie.
Yeah.
And they decided we're going to update, but they didn't do a lot of updates. They updated the date, they cut out the smoking, they cut out some racial slurs, and they changed the name of the town. Because in the original book, he was further out in the sticks than San Francisco, and they changed it to San Francisco. So it was like really poorly done too.
Mm.
Made no sense. But no, Pat, go look at page 1 and check the date of the card. If it's 1953, it's the original. If it's like 1970 something, it's the new one.
Okay, I will check it.
While she's doing that, I was just going to mention that they did that with the Martian Chronicles as well. That there's dates that follow along with it, and the newer versions have them now like 2030 is when it all starts, instead of back in, I don't know what it was, 1970 or 1980.
Right.
It's so weird,
Gavin and I discovered that last summer when we were both reading it for Rocket Summer.
I think we had slightly different versions. Didn't
1999 in my version.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I have a Kindle. I have a Kindle version too. I should go check what my Kindle version says.
I suppose sometimes this, I buy most of my science fiction secondhand, but if you are printing something which is 50 years, 70 years old, it's not going to be very futuristic if it is all about, the approaching year 2000.
Right.
Yeah, but then it'll have to get reprinted it'll have to be changed every 30, 40 years, won't it? So it's a bit, why don't we just accept the fact that some books just go out of date and it doesn't matter?
Right. I think we also discovered we had different versions because that book has been frequently banned here, and some of the stories have been removed.
Some of the stories were not there, were they?
We did not have the same edition. I mean, we didn't have the same stories. Reading the same book, but it was not the same book.
Yeah. Which is classic. That does my head in.
Got a nomination here for the Island of Dr. Moreau. Basically, any H.G. Wells, right? You could throw any H.G. Wells in that first week.
That's my favorite H.G. Wells book. I've read 5 of his books, and that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Right.
Ha!
Randy, I'm just going to mute you for now. You can unmute yourself if you have something to say.
I was about to say, my Kindle version of Martian Chronicles, it is first chapter is 2030.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they've done it.
They've done it.
That's the new one.
Can I just bounce off the time travel comment? Because I'm going to be going through this as well, and I want to do this quite comprehensively as well through the year. That's the Time Travel Almanac.
Yeah.
It's a really good collection, a huge collection of time travel stories. Like it's 900 pages. It's massive. And it's got tons of stuff in it. So yeah, that's one of the things I'm reading in the next little while.
The Vandermeers sure know how to make huge anthologies, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Earth Abides reads like an anthropology thesis from Heidi. Lots of time travel stories. Yeah. City on the Edge of Forever. Great story. And Star
Written
Trek.
by Han Nelson.
That's right. Good job. All right. Referring to someone else's comment there.
Can I say something about Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
Definitely.
Okay, so they made a movie of it in the 50s, which is absolutely terrific and holds up really well, called Invasion of the Body Snatchers, directed by Don Siegel, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Don Siegel, who's famous for directing Clint Eastwood westerns and also the first Dirty Harry movie. But then they made a second Invasion of the Body Snatchers movie, and that's the one that starred Donald Sutherland.
Yeah.
And that second version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers was also really, really good.
Yeah.
Then they made a third version.
All time.
I'm sorry?
The second 70s version of Invasion of Body Snatchers, best ending for a movie of all time.
Really great. Really, really great.
And it has a cameo by Don Siegel.
Yes, it does. That's right. That's right. I'd forgotten that until you mentioned it just now. But yeah, he's if I'm not mistaken, he's running down the street or something, right?
No. Kevin, was it Kevin McCarthy?
Oh, Kevin McCarthy.
Of the original.
Kevin.
That's right. Yeah.
he gets into a cab, and the cab driver is Don Siegel.
Don Siegel.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. That's great. Well, so there was a third Invasion of the Body Snatchers movie just called Body Snatchers. Now, this one was one of the only science fiction / horror movies that Roger Ebert ever gave 4 stars to. And it has nothing in common with the book other than the idea of the body snatchers and how the body snatchers worked. But it was a completely different cast of characters and an entirely different plot.
Is that Abel Ferreira?
That's Abel Ferreira's version, yeah. And it's a really, really solid film, too. If you haven't seen it, you should. Body Snatchers was the name of that one.
There's a 4th one
and
as well.
So,
Invasion.
but it was hugely influential, Invasion of the Body Snatchers was. And then if you look for that premise, there's a Robert Rodriguez film. It's the one that's set in the high school.
Yeah.
But I don't remember if anybody remembers the name of it.
The Faculty.
The Faculty. The Faculty is basically just Invasion of the Body Snatchers put into a high school. And it's a terrific film. It holds up really well to this day, I think. But yeah, that's one of those wells that they keep going back to. And they somehow managed to have pretty good luck. Now, there was a TV series called Invasion, I think, which was also based on Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And I don't know whether it was good or not because I haven't seen it.
But the thing about this is that this was really a story, as I saw it, as the Red Scare. Is that it was all about fear of communists hiding them.
Right.
And it was very effective. And the problem is that we don't really have a Red Scare nowadays. We're not. Okay, some people are worried.
An orange scare nowadays.
What?
We have an orange scare nowadays. Because, his face is all orange, the makeup.
Yes, we do.
It's a Donald Trump reference, everybody.
I got it, Randy. I'm with you.
We're going to move on because we're not going to give him airtime.
Donald Trump is absolutely petrified of time travelers because they kept coming back to try and kill him when he was a baby.
Okay, moving on. I'm going to take care of this. Captain Richards here. All right. Service model. These are some recommendations from Heidi.
Yes, great.
Lawrence.
I did a review of Service Model recently on my channel. It's a brilliant book.
Yeah. And let's see what we got here. Oh, this is remembering some of the early Soviet books.
Oh.
And they're just chatting with each other, which is great, and giving some recommendations.
Grimsby, somewhere up north.
All Ballard is brilliant. Lord of Light is a classic. Dream Master, I've read Dream Master, very good book. That one's straight science fiction.
I might get to that.
Let's see here. They're chatting with each other. I like that they're just chatting with each other here. Grimbarians. Greatest fan's name ever. Grimsy okay. This is a football reference here.
Football, yeah.
Yeah.
Soccer, guys.
All right. Hi from Nottinghamshire.
Nottinghamshire.
The River World model or novels. Okay. Interesting because, yes, they're based on a lot of historical characters. Anyone want to comment on Farmer's River World?
Well, Gareth,
go beyond.
Gavin and I have been reading the first 4 in River World this year.
That's definitely sci-fi for me. It takes a lot of historical characters, but he does his own thing with them. They're certainly not historical because they don't behave how they behaved. They behave how they might behave had they been, resurrected along with the rest of humanity. And it is it's almost like a video game. We've spoken about this before, haven't we, Greg? It's like, I thought it felt like a video game. It got a very sort of enclosed. It's a huge gaming area, but there are very strict parameters of where you can and can't do. And when you die, you get resurrected. It was just like a very long Mario world.
Riverworld was before gaming was a.
Yeah, Phil
Yeah.
Jose Farmer invented gaming. This is a newsflash.
Well, no, it's just it's Minecraft because they've got to make everything with very limited resources that are around them.
That's surely that's faint praise, isn't it?
I didn't know Farmer was responsible for all that.
You'll come back
Brilliant.
and build them.
Heidi wants you to teach Earth Abides now.
Yeah, do a video on it.
Okay,
Have you done a
I'll do
video
it.
on it, Pat?
Work on the curriculum.
Yep.
Homer was the original
Yeah.
fantasy writer. Oh, there's all sorts of debates about who's original in fantasy and science fiction.
Yeah.
The sequel as well.
There's a new Odyssey coming out soon, isn't there? Christopher Nolan.
Yeah. Ah, good.
Good.
Rocket Summer is so great. They're taking part as well in Rocket Summer.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you. Sorry, Gareth. Were you just saying there's a TV series of this now, Earth
No,
Abides?
no. There's a new film of the Odyssey coming out.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just bouncing off that.
I know Earth Abides is a series too, but I haven't watched it. I haven't actually talked to
Yeah.
anybody who's watched it, unless any of you have.
No.
No.
Okay.
I like the book too much to bother with the movie.
You know, I'm kind of with you that I don't really want to watch that adaptation. All right, they're chatting with each other again. I think it's important just to take a quick look at what's going on here. Ah, there we go. How about Child's End? Love the theme in that book. It's foundational to all the fantasy I read, especially Wheel of Time.
I like Child's End.
It's kind of hard to talk about without spoiling in some ways because there's
Yeah,
a couple
yeah.
of huge paradigm shifts in there.
Yeah.
But
And the initial kind of surprise,
Yeah.
that is brilliant. So
Yeah.
yeah, you
just
gotta
like
go
a
into
third of the way
Child's End.
in.
Yeah, go in blind.
Highly recommended though. One of Clark's best.
Yeah.
I understand that want to read it for the first time again so that you don't know what's coming.
Yeah, you read that shocker and you're going like, huh?
And
Yeah.
it keeps going. It keeps adding stuff that you're like, oh, you're going to go there now. Oh, you're
I
going to
agree.
It's
About
very
2/3 of the way
inventive.
in, I thought there was another one in terms of the more interstellar situation that was going on.
Yeah.
There we go.
Ah.
On YouTube, it's an old one.
Yeah, we need to look that one up. Queen of Mars. Nice. You were talking about film adaptations, and
Mhm.
and I think it'd be good to mention because it's such an important book for a potential Rocket Summer read. Day of the Triffids. One of my favourite books. I absolutely love Day of the Triffids. There you go.
I love Day of
That's
the
the one I was going to talk about. Is Wyndham.
Oh,
Yay.
brilliant. So I'll let you talk about it in a minute, but I was just going to quickly say that I find it fascinating, the different versions. So there was an 80s version that I saw when I was a kid that was made by the BBC, which is kind of a classic thing, and the Triffids look kind of all rubbery and stuff. But it's kind of a classic thing. But there was quite an interesting one that was done I'll say recently, about 10 years ago. I've forgotten who the main actor was, but
Doug
Sasha
Ray
Richardson,
Scott.
I think. Yeah, Doug Ray Scott. Yeah, I quite liked it. It was taken seriously. You know, they tried to do a serious attempt to do the book, but I absolutely love that book. So I just thought I'd mention it but then Richard's about to mention it anyway. That's all.
I am. Here, I'll go off the comments here. We got. Sorry to the people who are doing all the comments here. We may not get to all those, but the author I want to mention, and people who know my channel know that he was very influential for me, because in grade 9, I was assigned and read Day of the Triffids, and that was when science fiction all of a sudden became really cool because it could be literature as well. At least that's how I felt it was presented to me in grade 9. And in Canada, we also, this is not a very representative cover at all, and it, in fact, has nothing really to do with it, but The Chrysalids is a post-apocalyptic novel after a nuclear holocaust and survivors. And those are both taught in school. They're not, as far as I know, anymore. And that's why I want to bring Wyndham up. And I would say that definitely our UK friends here, well known there, but not as well known in North America. There's a number of people I've talked to who are new into science fiction who've never heard his name.
Wow.
And we've talked about the Midwich Cuckoos. these are all Peter Lord covers from the late 70s, early 80s when I got into him. And a favorite of mine that not everybody talks about much is Chalky.
Chucky, yeah, great stuff.
And I know that there was a adaptation of that as well. But Chalky, for those who are watching who've never heard of Wyndham, this one's a story about a dad who's really concerned for his son who has an imaginary friend, but is that friend really imaginary? And it definitely goes into psychology, worrying about your kid, anxiety about that, and takes it to a science fiction place that some people might guess, but it was really well done and very, very short. So he would be my nomination of someone I think that should be more widely read and used to be, at least in the Canadian educational system.
Yeah.
So Richard, last December or last winter and the winter before that, I had an event called Winter of Wyndham, where I tried to encourage people to read John Wyndham. So it was before we became friends. But yeah, I definitely am a big champion of Wyndham. I think he's incredible.
Yeah.
And he's a writer that had to go to the US to make his name as a writer. So he was a pulp author before, sort of going to the more sort of longer form, serious books. I think
there
Kraken Wakes is my favorite.
Which one?
The Kraken Wakes.
That's your favorite. That's interesting.
Yeah, no,
just
that's a
Kraken Wakes
absolutely superb book.
about a month ago, or 2 months ago.
I find it very interesting because I consider his career to have two parts: before World War II and after World War II. And before World War II is more towards the pulp side, but you see some of the glimpses of the Wyndham that we see after World War II. There was one atrocious novel called the Chaos Plan or something like that was written that was kind of reverted back to the 1930s. It didn't get printed at the time, and that's why he actually wrote Day of the Triffids, because he was having trouble getting that one published. But once the Day of the Triffids took off, man, he had a string of 6 or 7 novels and short stories that until his death in 1969, I think, that really, really were good.
There's a book that I was really impressed with. I didn't expect much because it wasn't as talked about, and it was an earlier one, and I really enjoyed it. Stowaway to Mars.
Yeah, I've read it too. I enjoyed it too. He
I
had
think,
some strong female characters sometimes.
Yes.
Trouble with Lycan as well.
Yes, I really like Trouble with Lycan.
Seemed that we were ahead of the time.
Trouble with Lycan. It might have been you, Gareth. Someone was trying to say read Trouble with Lycan. It's probably you.
Definitely champion it. It's one of my favorites. I think it's probably my third favorite. So I'd go Day of the Triffids, then Midwich Cuckoos, then Trouble with Lycan for me.
Even the one that was published posthumously, Webb, is pretty good.
Yeah, that's good as well. Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah. He's also got lots of names.
There was a lot of pseudonyms used, especially before World War II.
Before Day of the Triffids was big, I think I'll keep that name now.
Yeah.
I think it's him. I think it's how he writes women characters that is why I like the Kraken Wakes. That coupling, is
the couple, the two main characters.
They are just so comfortable together.
And that's mid 1950s that one came out.
Yeah. So I think they're both working for the BBC or something, and they're both sort of reporters trying to get the scoop on what's happening, and the way she does it, I can't remember her name. She's basically a bit flirty, and he's sort of comfortable with that because he knows she's just doing her job. And the way they talk to each other, I just think it's something that you don't often see. It is a problem that science fiction has.
Yeah.
If I go back to the Eaton Doc Smith, it's awful. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure. Sometimes he can write male characters, let alone female ones. But
and for people who think it's a story that's about a big sea creature, it's not. It's an alien invasion story.
Are they aliens or were they?
I think it's pretty clear, personally, but
you think so?
maybe it's debatable.
They sort of pop in some of them as they come down.
Yeah,
oh, that's right. The saucers. Yeah,
but it's also
they don't put the two together. for a
it's
while.
like environmental science fiction, isn't it? I think he's trying to make a point about the climate and all that. Can I just draw from Gavin there about how do you guys feel about one of the things about science fiction, which is something I think is worth tackling on BookTube in general for general readers, is that a lot of these initial ideas, some of these classic books or stories have been written by people who have got really archaic attitudes to women or to relationships, to men even. And that is definitely a barrier, I think, for selling science fiction, older science fiction, to younger people. You know, I feel like it's a lot easier to sell science fiction to younger people with newer stuff, like the stuff for the last 10, 20 years, because it's written with more modern attitudes to women and that kind of thing. What do you think about that, guys?
Well, Gareth, there's a problem. Take our modern science fiction right now, okay? Adrian Tchaikovsky. Let's pick him. Push him forward 50 years. Yeah. What are the people in 50 years going to think of him?
They'll have the same conversation, Greg.
Yeah, they'll go, why is he so outdated?
No, but it's not me saying that it's because I agree with you, and I think that everyone should read old stuff. I'm not saying that you shouldn't read old stuff, but I just feel like I personally would love to sell science fiction to people, get them to read it, try it out, because I love science fiction. And I just feel like if you go, read science fiction, it's awesome, read some Asimov, and they'll be reading it and be like, what? And I just feel like sometimes it's better to sell something that is more modern in its tone. And then if they want to go before, that's cool. Because you are right, obviously things change, and I'm not suggesting at all that we don't read old books, and dated books should be read. But I feel like science fiction in particular has got this problem with the old way it was written. Worse than a lot of other stuff, I feel. Don't know.
No, Gareth, it's possible, because if you pick up Thomas Hardy, let's just say, you can say, oh, that's the way it was back then. And when you look at the science fiction in the 50s and they're talking about the future and go, nope, you got it wrong. And I guess there's a flip in your brain that you have to look back at what it would have been like in those days to envision a future.
Maybe that's the difference, because if you're reading Hardy, you're reading something that is historical. If you're reading science fiction, you're reading something that is presented as being, the future.
Right.
I don't even think that's not the point I was making, because I think if you're into science fiction or you get into it, you don't care about those kind of problems. You just like the fact it's set in the future, even if it's an old future. I just kind of talking about a lot of authors' attitude to women and the way they wrote to women. If you're trying to sell it to a modern audience, even young men,
it's very alienating. A lot of it is very alienating.
Yeah.
It's hard to read as a modern woman. It's hard to read some of Heinlein, for instance. I mean, some of the old stuff. It's I don't see myself anywhere in. I don't ever see any mirrors. It's very alienating.
Yeah. Anyway, carry on. I just thought I'd raise that. I thought it's an interesting point about our beloved science fiction.
I just thought I'd run some comments under you guys while you were doing that. Some comments that we had here.
Well, praise for the BBC Triffids.
Yeah,
that's the best Triffids. I'm thinking the 1980s one.
I watched it when I was a kid, so I'd love to think it's still brilliant. I'd love to see it.
It holds up. Yeah.
Diane has joined us. And
I saw that back in the 80s. It was on the PBS.
PBS.
And it was it's a 6-part series, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think it was something like that. Yeah.
And it was really good, as I remember.
The BBC version of Hitchhikers is amazing, by the way, much better than the film. Have anyone seen the BBC adaptation of Hitchhikers?
I saw it in the 80s.
Brilliant.
I remember a little bit.
So, Pat, I'm curious. You were just mentioning this a little bit here. Have you found science fiction very dated in terms of gender relationships and portrayals?
Some of it. Some of the old stuff feels very dated.
Or is dated the right word here? Should we just say it's insulting?
Well, some of it is, and I don't want to pick on any particular author. Some of it is, yeah, I mean, the woman is completely objectified, and not all works. I mean, we've read a bunch of things, and there were even some Heinlein books that we read where, the female character was the smartest one in the room, or but yeah, some of it can be very insulting. And in fact, Gareth and I were just talking the other day. We're reading some stories together in the Wesleyan anthology. And we were just talking about Leslie F. Stone the other day. And I don't know if I found it in this book or if it was in another one of my anthologies that I have, where it said that she had submitted, I don't know, story after story after story, to the pulps. And one of her stories got returned to her with a note from John W. Campbell, and he said, science fiction should not be, what was it, Gareth? Should not be written by women, nor is it for women. So I mean, he couldn't have been any more, he couldn't have any more.
Well, and you've got a history of people trying to get into the magazines and disguising their name. So just an initial rather than their actual name.
That's why a lot of women did write by initials. She actually wrote by, she changed her last name, but she did write under her actual first name. She didn't hide that she was a woman, although it could have been a man.
There's a James Tiptree Jr.'s famous example in there, and then DC Fontana from Star Trek. She deliberately put DC rather than Dorothy, I think is her name.
C.L. Moore.
C.L. Moore, C.L. Moore. There's lots of examples of it. And that's because it was so male dominated, and not just the writers, because obviously, that's the other thing. We were picking which stories to read, and Pat went, "Oh, we haven't picked a woman yet," and I went, "Yeah, we haven't got a lot of choice." So I
mean, there are a couple, and
there were a couple, yeah.
And I have a Library of America 2-volume set. And it's all the early women in science fiction. It's just complete anthologies of the women. The first one is basically the years of Rocket Summer, and then the second volume is 1970 forward. But but somebody had to do that. Somebody had.
Yeah, I was going to say that's come out, but to say, oh look, these people were around as well.
Yeah.
And they were there. I mean, Lee Brackett, Margaret Sinclair.
Right.
Judith Merrill.
Not every
Judith Merrill,
not every editor was as antediluvian as John Campbell.
Yeah, I mean that was really awful. That was the worst, But I read Judith Merrill last summer, and she's in all of these anthologies. It's pretty much the same story, though. Like a wide readership. I'm sure she wrote more than that one story. But
one of my favorite books I've read this year is Long Tomorrow by Lee Brackett. It's a fantastic book.
I agree. I love it.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. But I was going to mention, I think she might be in this bracket, but she might be 70s, 80s. But I'm trying to get into Zena Henderson as well.
That's earlier. Her stories are from the 50s and 60s.
Oh, there we go. So yeah, that
yep.
fit
And
as
she was a kindergarten teacher in Tucson, Arizona, or that area at least.
Right.
The People as her famous stories. Yeah. And then she has they're all short stories. She doesn't have a novel.
Yeah.
But very interesting.
Yeah.
I sort of say it's like science fiction and the Waltons all in one. You know what the Waltons are.
Through the lens of the Waltons.
There's an innocence to her stories, which is endearing. We'll go back to some comments here. Liked Chalky as well.
Stowaway to Mars.
Mars, yeah.
That's cool.
We're giving Heidi lots to read.
Awesome. That's what we're here for.
And she thinks that PKD is very politically correct, but obviously very popular.
PKD just was a messed up man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is so awful, it's laughable. Nobody really, thinks like this anymore.
It's like watching sometimes those old 1930s movies when we were talking about some of the dialogue. It's just the way men and women kind of chatted with each other, at least movie-wise. I'm not sure if that's really the case in real life.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, talking about the portrayal of women, It's a kind of an excuse to mention the stainless steel rat. Angelina, his kind of the woman that gets his attention in the second book, and they marry and they have kids. She's a brilliant role model kind of character, strong female character in this. I mean, this is like 80s. But yeah, that's quite impressive, actually. Harry Harrison wrote a very strong character with Angelina. She's badass.
I didn't realize there was a good biography out there. I'm starting to collect biographies of science fiction writers. I just picked up the one of James Tiptree Jr., which is Alice Sheldon.
That's interesting.
I might read that one sooner than later. Let's move on here.
I've got a biography of Harry Harrison I need to read, actually.
Ah.
I think it's called Harrison or something.
Randy had logged off, so he just asked. We're glad that you were able to join us, Randy. Thank you for joining us.
Wow, that's interesting.
Ah.
And I've seen Gene Wolfe's series praised a lot, but never by a woman on BookTube.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting, isn't it? The male lens. We don't notice these things sometimes.
Well, you know what? I do notice, like, I was very happy when Pat started reading science fiction and other women. I just love to have more perspective on some of these things.
Yeah.
It's kind of difficult for an old white guy to really be talking about some of these racial or gender issues.
I know. It's a great conversation.
Yeah. Kim from Middle of the Book March reviewed Blankets, this graphic novel. I've forgotten who's author. I really liked it, and then she was saying all this stuff that she was offended by. I was like, wow, I need to look at that again. I didn't even notice that stuff.
Is that the graphic novel?
Yeah,
you read it, Greg.
I read it. Because I read it for a banned book, and I'm going like, it was just totally unimpressed with that.
I liked it. I thought it was interesting.
Part of it is that I don't really get into young adult stuff.
But I didn't see the stuff that Kim talked about.
And it's just like, okay, you're in love with it as a teenager. Get over it. You know?
There was something that would have been genuinely offensive if I'd noticed it. And when she said what it was, I was like, wow, how did I not see that? So I'm going to read it again. But it's funny, isn't it?
But what you say was genuinely offensive. Maybe I missed it too.
Yeah, I can't remember. But it was like...
I haven't read it. I don't remember.
I don't know. It was something really weird. Some sexual thing that was a bit weird. That was like, what? I don't remember seeing that. You know. So, yeah.
We all have our blind spots, don't we?
Yeah.
That's why it's great to have so many opinions, because we have these blind spots for whatever reason, how we were raised, or the society itself, things that, and sometimes science fiction can really actually speak well to this. And some of the science fiction authors really did challenge the status quo.
Absolutely.
There was a lot of interesting challenges about gender in the 1950s, which was very interesting.
Absolutely.
Just read a story recently, I think it was called Day Million by Frederick Pohl, which is very interesting in terms of how people a million days in the future would view us and how we would view them. And I think science fiction, that is one of the things that could attract people. Good science fiction can provide perspective or a reflection of our society in a way that is very valuable to read.
It is. And
the whole what if thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like genders in science fiction, my review will come out Monday, but I read a short story called Revolt of the Pedestrians by David H. Keller, published in 1928. I'll just give you a brief synopsis of what I thought was kind of defined, is that in the story there are motorists, basically people let their legs wither, and you spend your whole life in an automobile. And it's gone on for hundreds of years. And there's these pedestrians that still walk, and they're revolting, and not revolting, having a revolt. and at one point, one of these pedestrians has to disguise himself as a motorist, and a female motorist. And as he's disguised as this female motorist, a different female motorist falls in love with him, thinking that he is a her.
Oh.
And then when it comes out that he actually loves her, he basically comes to her and says, I'm a man, I'm a pedestrian, I have legs. I know you thought I was a woman, but I still love you. I'll take care of you. And then this woman was a lesbian. and I won't spoil it, but her reaction to having fallen in love with a man with legs.
It does sound like about half of Shakespeare's plays.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the end of Some Like It Hot when he says nobody's perfect.
But the thing is, I didn't. I mean, I know there were lesbians back in 1928, but to portray one so casual,
Yeah, no, it's quite progressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah,
And the
that's
fact
awesome.
that this one character was saying, "Oh, you're okay," even you're a lady with basically no legs, but you know, it was weird.
We got a few more people joining us here. Just going to say hi to
Hey!
Jake of Pulp Mortem. He loves his old science
Yeah.
fiction. Sometimes the pulpier, the better, of course. And
Yeah.
Goblin as well. Welcome, Goblin. Um, just talking to Pulp Mortem there. Buch Deckel is a viewer now from Germany that just recently came on my last test live feed. So
Wow.
welcome.
Awesome.
And here we got a longer comment. Speaking of YA sci-fi,
Oh, that's supposed to be
4
good.
Motor Engine books this last summer. The Sun
Oh.
left them behind. They were so poorly written that characters had zero growth.
Oh.
Oh,
They're
how do
very
you
popular,
feel
aren't
about? I have not read Mortal Engines. I saw
I
the
have
movie,
not read it.
which I don't think necessarily represents it so well.
Huh.
they? Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah. One of the things that is a huge blind spot for me is actually modern science fiction. I've dabbled in a couple things, say since 2000, but not very many, and so I don't really understand the connections or the comparisons sometimes that people try to make between vintage stuff and modern stuff. Do you, any of you have a comment about that?
I would say that there's been, talking about YA stuff, there was a big shift and rise in YA stuff after the Hunger Games, and there's loads of Hunger Games rip-offs. So YA sci-fi has had that kind of tone to it, that dystopian thing, with young people like going against the Divergent. I think that Divergent series is like a Hunger Games rip-off, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So there's a lot
Maze
of that.
Runner, maybe?
Yeah, Maze Runner, lots of stuff, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I haven't read the Hunger Games books yet, and I do want to read
Don't.
them.
Don't. Greg didn't like those.
Greg didn't like them. Yeah, but you don't even like any YA, do you?
I just don't get why. I mean, there's something about me that just does not get YA. I mean, in my opinion, it's like riding a bicycle. You start off with a tricycle, you go back to training wheel, and then you ride a bicycle. You don't go backwards. So as an adult, why would I go backwards and read something that's supposed to train you to get up to adult rating?
My first novel was about 3 teenage boys who end up on another planet. It was cool. It's a really
By the
good
way,
novel. Go and get it.
How many novels have you written?
2.
Okay.
Yeah, 2.
I only learned that recently too.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
You're welcome.
I had some money from Amazon at the beginning of the week. I couldn't believe it. I think the first time I've had money from Amazon from months and months and months. I had a little celebration and I bought myself a bar of chocolate with the money.
From Amazon.
Free postage.
Let's see what else we have here. Diane comes in about men dressed as women, makeup and all, and women as men, going off Greg's comment. There was a lot of sort of cross-dressing, at least humor or mistaken identities.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So are there passages from books that stay with you?
That's so cool, Philip.
That's a good question. I like that, Philip.
He's mentioned the end of the Shrinking Man. I talk about the end of the Shrinking Man all the time. It's such a brilliant ending.
It's such a great book.
Yeah. So we're talking
By
about the great Richard Matheson, aren't we?
Yeah.
But the ending is just like so bleak, because It's not even. It's not. I mean, I'm not going to spoil it, but the whole book is just goes in a trajectory that just keeps going, and it's just really profound. The ending, it's just like wow. You finish it and you go, whoa, is it even worth me making a cup of tea now? You know, which is a stupid comment. Obviously, it's always worth making a cup of tea.
I'm going to have to go pretty soon. We've been here
to make a cup of tea. Greg's going to make a cup of tea.
No. It's just, I'm going on a trip tomorrow morning. I got to
go reheat your
dinner done, and
I think what we'll try and do is you can go whenever you need to. We'll just try and wrap this up before we get to 2 hours here.
Yeah, I can go 15 more minutes. That's fine.
Okay. And I was just going to say, there's a lot of first lines of novels that I remember. I'm thinking of Inverted World by Christopher Priest, that I am 450 miles old or something like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which gives you all of a sudden that dissonance, like, what? How are you miles old? What does that mean?
That's a really good subject for a video, isn't it?
And
great first lines.
We've already mentioned the book before, but one of the best openings of a science fiction novel is Day of the Triffids. When you
yes. I don't remember it, but yes, I remember locking in.
The day you know is Wednesday sounds like Sunday.
Okay.
When a day that you happen to know is Wednesday starts off sounding like Sunday, there is something seriously wrong somewhere. That is a great line. Definitely.
That is a great line.
I can remember, you know what, I'm just in the middle of reading Jack Vance's The Dying Earth. And in the third story, there's a description of the dying Earth, about how the Earth is so old and the sky is this dark indigo blue and the sun is red and huge in the sky. And it just continues to go on like that. And it's not too long. It's, you know, it's maybe 3 or 4 sentences, but it totally encapsulates the setting for the stories that are in there. And it's just it's beautiful prose.
I'm wondering what the first line of Fahrenheit 451 is. I bet it's good.
It's a pleasure to burn.
Well, you know what? Both.
It's a pleasure to burn.
It's a pleasure to burn. Yeah, that's right.
Both
that's
Pat and I have.
Thought of it.
Pat last year and myself this year, we started our videos with reading Rocket Summer from Ray Bradbury.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful, you know, he has some very amazing sentences and prose as well.
He's amazing.
He's a very lyrical writer, you know, it's almost poetic sometimes.
Yeah, some of his stories, nothing happens and it's just like a description, but the way he writes, you just think, well, that was brilliant, even though nothing happened. And anyway, other writer would have made it really boring, but it's just the way he writes.
Yeah. I think I was doing the summer tag recently, 101 Days of Summer, and it was like books that remind you of summer or something. I forget what the question was, but I read from Dandelion Wine from Bradbury. It was just so beautiful, so evocative of, you know, what summer feels like, you know, when you're young, you know.
That's my next one in my Bradbury deep dive, Dandelion Wine. Yeah. If anyone wants to read it with me, that'll be in a few weeks, probably, hopefully.
Cool.
What's everyone's next Rocket Summer book?
Actually, you know what? I was going to ask you, what are you really looking forward to, or your next one? By the way, Captain Infinity, okay, I understand you think that we're reality's the trouble. It's not that he's.
I don't know if we want him to be our captain.
Anyways, go ahead. You held up your book there, Gareth.
War of Worlds. I've started that, so that's my first Rocket Summer book. So I'm going to read that, and then I'm going to go into some of the short stories I'm reading with Pat. That's my first Rocket Summer journey. It's a reread, by the way. I read this when I was a kid, so it's a reread.
Gareth and I picked short stories for every decade, right? We picked, first we were going to just pick a story for each decade. Then we picked 2 for each decade. Then we didn't want to exclude anybody. Yeah, I don't know. He had people he wanted to read. I had people I wanted to read. So I think now we're up to 8. I don't know. We have a lot for each.
Yeah, but it does include Pat's going to read my favorite Harlan Ellison story. So that's very exciting.
Yes.
Repent Harlan said the TikTok man.
Okay, you say TikTok man, because I just read a Harlan Ellison story for a project where I'm trying to find the 25 best science fiction stories of the 20th century. I picked I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
Yeah, that's definitely his most popular one. Definitely.
Which I guess, I mean, it's those two that they say is either or it's his best.
Yeah, incredible story. And just really horrible, really nasty story. Yeah. Repellent Harlequin isn't quite as vicious. But yeah. Anyway, we keep talking about Hal Anderson. Like, he's the only author around.
Gavin, what's up next for
H.G.
you?
Wells. Go on, Gav.
Well, I've just finished Skylark 3, so I'm going to go on and I'm going to read The Man with Six Senses by Muriel Yeager. So from the 1920s, she was Dorothy L. Sayers' roommate for a little while. I read was it The Question Mark for Rocket Summer by her last year, and it's Brave New World, but written 5-6 years before Brave New World, basically.
Wow.
So I'm expecting good things. Yeah, this is a British Library edition. So yeah, that's the next on the list.
I'm going to have to watch that because I have no idea about who that author is.
She's very good.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Greg.
E.E. Doc Smith is on my plate for maybe tonight, starting on my trip tomorrow.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You're going to read the whole library on your Kindle.
Now, someone mentioned that I should not read Triplanetary first.
Yeah, I saw that in the comments. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to look at it and see which one was written first.
Yeah.
When I read authors, I like to read in publication order, not necessarily in chronological story order.
Skylark of Space will be first if you're not just doing the Lensman.
Well, so whatever in my book. I have 11 books of E.E. Doc Smith. I'll figure out which one.
Good mega pack.
11 books. Wow.
And Pat, besides some of the short stories, do you have any other that you're looking forward to?
So I was also going to read War of the Worlds.
Hey.
You know, I've read the short stories that we're reading together. I read those, and then I was going to do War of the Worlds. Last summer, I did Time Machine, which I loved.
Brilliant.
I know the War of the Worlds story. I know I'm going to love this. So that's next up. Probably this weekend. I've been jotting down titles though as people have been talking today, because I had a Wyndham that I was going to read also, but I think that's the 50s. That's in 2 weeks. So next up is War of the Worlds, and for the 40s, you know, the following week, I think I had all short stories from different, you know, what we picked, but then also from the Hall of Fame volume. I don't think I had a novel for the 40s.
You know something? If we do this again next year, I'm going to pick up the Hall of Fame book and read the whole book, because then
it would work.
Everything.
People are doing that. Steve Donahue and Josh Crebo are reading the whole book.
Yeah, it's an awesome
I've read
book.
about 5 or 6 of the stories last month. So I said, I don't need to reread the story that close back to back. So I'll wait till next year to reread the whole book.
I'm reading most of it this month.
Are you?
There's anything that I've read in the last 2 years, I won't reread, but anything else is getting a go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Just simply because of the way it's written, that it's the Science Fiction Writers of America in 1966 or whatever voted on all the stories previous to that should be they not posthumously awarded the Nebula, but or deserving, or the best stories. To have 26 stories like that, it's hard to beat that anthology.
It is.
One place, yeah.
It's a great anthology.
And you know how hard it is to rank them best to worst?
No, I don't.
I'm trying to rank them.
Wow. But Greg, also, you know, you talk about you can't get rid of books because you'll regret it. That's one of the books I've got rid of in the past.
Oh.
What a fool!
I want to go on to the novellas as well, that they have the 2-volume version.
All 4 of the volumes.
Yeah,
they're great.
Yeah. For me, people know I because I already showed. If you haven't, you can take a look at the beginning of the video. But I showed what people had voted for, and what the results were, and a couple extra that I'm reading. And I also want to mention that in the description for this video, we have links to all the co-hosts and Michael K. Vaughn, and just a description of what Rocket Summer is if you are not familiar with it. So that would be good for you to take a look there. Feel free, if you're watching this after the live stream, to go back and take a look at some of the recommendations. There's a lot in this video. I think maybe what we'll try and do is fire through some more of the comments, and then we'll say goodbye for today. Let's see here. Has anyone here like Project? I've read it. That's one of those newer ones I did read, and I didn't DNF it. But the trailer of the movie, which I saw as well, shows way too much in terms of what the story is about.
I'm glad I've been told that. Someone told me, because I DNF'd it thinking it wasn't the right time. That I'm pretty sure I'm going to like it, so I'm going to read it again, but I'm not going to watch the trailer. Yeah. I want the book to give me that moment. Yeah. But I've heard. Yeah.
I think I find people polarized on that book a little bit too, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about Tanith Lee. There's another great female author. I can't remember. Did she wrote in the 60s?
Didn't she write mostly fantasy stuff?
It's mostly fantasy, but she was
Yeah.
one of the writers for Blake 7.
Oh,
Really?
I did not know that.
I'm a massive Blake 7 fan. I was going to mention Blake 7 when you mentioned Avon earlier.
Dennis must be here perhaps in Winnipeg, because I volunteer with the Children's Hospital Book Market. We certainly do get some of those donated.
Books. What else?
You have it right there. Give us the line.
Read us the first line.
I find it. Yesterday, I read the line, "The chances of anything coming from Mars is 1,000,000 to 1," and my head sang it.
I was going to say, after you've read it, it's got to be a listening party.
You got to pick up the Jeff Wayne album.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I didn't read it. My head went, "The chances of anything coming from Mars." Right. No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that this world was being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own.
And there's that Jeff Wayne.
I hope I sounded like Richard Burton when I said that.
I thought he was in the room. I always wanted to splice together the narration of Richard Burton doing War of the Worlds and the narration of Richard Burton doing Under Milk Wood. I think there's something you could do there.
Mix the lines together and it would sound like absolute balmy nonsense.
Sell it as a brand new.
Under Milk Wood's balmy anyway.
Yeah, a brand new version found. Will you ever get a version of 451 on film?
Really?
Because
there are two versions, and they're not good.
Yeah.
Sephiros has joined us, and sorry, we're on our last legs here.
That's right. That was probably 20 minutes ago.
Watch though. Harlan Ellison didn't understand time travel.
He didn't write a lot of time travel stuff, actually, considering how much he did write.
Yeah.
My favourite time travel book is Replay by Ken Grimwood.
Replay is a good one.
I love it.
Philip is right. I have a poster that came out of, it's the very top, I guess to the viewer's right. It's a John Berkey poster that came out of the second collection of the book club edition of Doc Smith.
Cool.
Does anybody read Doc Savage?
I read the first volume, Bronze Man.
I've read a couple.
And it was like, okay, it did not inspire me to read more.
Yeah. All right. We'd mentioned that Chris he's reading Liminal Spaces as well. This is Chris of Liminal Spaces. You can always check it out a little bit later. Hope that your daughter's dental surgery went well.
Yeah.
Jules
Jenny
Verne,
sends it
yes. We haven't mentioned Jules Verne as well. Mary Shelley was in one of my polls, but those are two that people talk about from the 19th century.
Good opportunity to read Frankenstein if you haven't.
Yeah. Those are the earlier ones. Probably the two bigger ones.
Secret People.
I read Secret People this last Winter of Wyndham.
Aw.
Yeah, because Gavin, you championed Winter Wyndham, and I love that. Thank you very much, mate.
And we, Michael K. Vaughn, this is his idea that we are all championing.
Yes.
Championing. Oh, I had a tough time with that word,
Yeah,
but you
that's
know what I mean.
champion.
He's here in spirit.
Ah, there we go. That's LEM, Futurological Congress. Good. I think he's just talking to Chris of Liminal Spaces because he's talked about it. Second week, Van Vogt, who we haven't talked about. No one's picked
I just
anything of his right
finished
now.
Plan.
Did you? Okay.
Oh,
Awesome.
It's pretty good. I mean, it's really an adventure story. Very, very adventurous. I mean, very fast paced.
Voyage of the
He's one of my
Space-
Voyage of the Space Beagle. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say Voyage of the Space Beagle has definitely got a couple of stories that are very old stories, but they're very interesting, and you can see how they're influential. He actually wrote at least one or two of those stories here in my hometown of Winnipeg. He came from Manitoba and then moved off to California.
Hmm.
Were you going to say something else, Gareth?
He's actually one of my gaps, so I need to read it. I've got about 4 of his books, but I haven't read any of them yet. So I do need to do that.
Gary's saying something to you? I'm not sure what that emoji means or whatever.
That might be Gary who I work with. That might be the other music teacher. If it is, hello, Gary.
People saying hi to Chris. Oh, good. He's still listening, so I'm glad it went well, Chris.
Awesome.
And he's glad they enjoyed it. Philip is telling us we don't have a sense of adventure. And Liminal Spaces saying hi. Last one here. Thanks to Chris at Liminal Spaces. All right, we've caught up here. We're just over 2 hours. What I want to do is give you guys a big thank you. I threw this out there to our co-hosts to see if we would want to do some sort of a live kickoff. I call it a blast off. And it was so great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me. On this
thanks for doing
beginning to Rocket Summer.
Thank you for hosting.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
This is delightful.
And to all the viewers out there, I hope that you read some science fiction, some vintage science fiction this month, and join us and come to all these channels and enjoy all the reviews coming up. Maybe that's where you'll pick the book that you want to read.
Maybe.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to end the stream here.
Oh, here's Michael. Michael just came in.
Oh, is he here?
He's here.
Michael.
Michael, yay!
He's the captain.
He's the captain.
He's the real
Since
captain.
Michael's here, I saved something. I don't know. You can go if you need to. I'm going to save something here. Michael, I have this box in the mail that came to me. I'm going to put myself big here, I think. This box is because of you, and I'll show you. And it has to deal with Rocket Summer as well. Let me see if I can get it open. All right, it's working. I'll just show you 2 of the 3 books that are in here. Mm-hmm. Michael?
Oh.
Fantastic.
I remember having these EC comic weird fantasy and weird science fiction ones, and he did a video on it just earlier this week. And I just had to find the ones that were on sale and purchase them. So I might be reading some of those later in July here. So thanks a lot, Michael. You cost me some money, but I'm really looking forward to reading those. And let's get everybody back on the screen here.
That's what BookTube's all about.
That's right. Too bad we don't get a cut. Captain Infinity will have to tell us about that sometime.
Writing again. I bet it's not Captain Infinity on the side of his books.
Probably not.
How do you know that's not the main character?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Anyways, we were saying goodbye. Thank you so much, Michael, for joining us briefly. You can check out what we said about you earlier. All good things. So thanks again, and I'll end the stream here. Bye for now, everyone.
So long.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.